Hello everyone, my name is Giridhar Rajkumar and I'm a test automation consultant. Thanks for joining this session on behavior driven development and testing. In this talk, I'm going to share my personal encounters I faced while implementing behavior driven development along with software testing. So, what is behavior driven development? How does it go along with software testing? How can software testers adopt behavior-driven development concepts to leverage software testing in their Agile project? With these questions in our mind, let's get started. Before we deep dive into the topic, let's first try to understand what is behavior-driven development. Behavior-driven development, or commonly called as BDD, is an Agile software development process that encourages collaboration between different stakeholders like developers, testers, and non-technical people like business analysts or product owners who work together in that particular software project. When it comes to the requirements gathering time, all these different stakeholders will sit together and try to understand that particular requirement and come up with something called as acceptance criteria. We will talk about this particular behavior-driven development approach shortly, but one key thing what we need to understand is behavior-driven development is not test automation. With my experience working with different organizations and customers, one key thing what I have observed is people still believe that behavior-driven development means implementing test automation in simple English way or in simple English format. Now, let's see why people really like behavior-driven development model and why many organizations have started adopting this particular culture. First main thing is it really talks in a common language, which means the requirements what we are trying to define here is written in a simple English language that any key stakeholders will be able to understand, be it whether it is a developer or a tester or any other SME in that particular project. Secondly, the behavior-driven development model always considers itself from the outside in approach. In other words, we can say that it tries to implement the behaviors which contributes most directly to the business outcomes, which means it talks mostly from the business perspective and the requirements which we have derived talks only about that particular functionality of that particular requirement. Third point, what we need to consider here is the behavior-driven development describes the behaviors in a single notation which is directly accessible to the domain experts like business analysts or product owners or any other SMEs from that particular project, including the testers and the developers. Remember that behavior-driven development approach is nothing but a collaborative approach in which we all sit together as a team and try to understand the requirement and come up with the acceptance criteria to develop that particular requirement or that particular functionality and implement it as part of the entire application landscape. Now let's talk about the difference between the traditional workflow and behavior-driven development workflow. So in the traditional workflow, what happens is the business owner will tell the business analyst what he wants. Once the business analyst collects all the information that she wanted from the business owner, she will start writing the technical documentation which contains most of the use cases that the application should be having. So once she drafts that particular technical documentation or use case documentation, she will be uploading it to a common place where it can be a SharePoint or it can be any other location. And the developer will take that particular documentation and start developing the application. And the tester will use the same document to start writing the test case for that particular requirement. So ultimately, the developer will develop an application and the testers will start writing the test cases. But there is a huge problem over here which involves something called as miscommunication and assumptions. So if the particular requirement is not clear, the developer will start developing the application on his own understanding, whereas the tester will also start writing the test cases with his own understanding. So there is no collaborative process that is involved here. Once the application is developed and while testing, there comes the problem actually. So When the tester identifies a bug, he is not sure whether it is really a bug or not. So there will be an argument that will be happening between the developer and the tester saying that whether it is there in the requirement or not, whether the understanding is correct or wrong. So that's where we will be going to the business analyst to understand better from the requirements perspective. So this is one of the major drawback at this point of time, because by the time we have this particular testing in place, the development would have happened probably like 1 or 2 months. This is when the behavior driven development comes to save us. So in a typical behavior driven development workflow, the business owner or the product owner tells the business analyst what he wants. So once the business analyst gets the information from the product owner or any other SMEs who are there as part of the project, she will set up a meeting between the developer and the tester to understand and discuss on that particular requirement what the business owner or the product owner has told her. So as an end product of that particular meeting, or we call it in BDD terminology as Three Amigos session. So as outcome of that particular Three Amigos session, there comes the acceptance criteria. In order to write an effective acceptance criteria, one must know Gherkins syntax. So Gherkins syntax or Gherkin is a set of grammar rules that are structured enough for all stakeholders to understand the requirements. So in general, Gherkins syntax contains a couple of annotations that can be reused within that particular requirement to make that particular requirement more understandable. It is also used to document the system behavior of that particular requirement, which eventually becomes the living documentation of the entire application. Now let's talk about the role of a tester in a typical behavior-driven development project. The first and foremost responsibility of the tester is to get involved as part of the Three Amigos session. The second one is the tester will convert the acceptance criteria, which is coming as the outcome of the Three Amigos session, into automated acceptance tests. There are a variety of tools that are available in the market today to convert the acceptance criteria into automated acceptance tests. In my experience, I have seen lots of organizations who really got inspired with the BDD concept wants to convert their existing test cases, which are written in non-Gherkin syntax, into Gherkin syntax. And that's the place where the testers will start writing the acceptance criteria in Gherkin format and get it reviewed from the SMEs and then start automating the test cases. The fourth main role is to collaborate with the developers to discuss the failed acceptance tests or the acceptance criteria that ran as part of the automated tests. So the testers should have that mindset to collaborate with the developers to understand what is the failure, why is it happening, and where it is failing, and whether it is a problem from the automated script or from the application, and admit and then fix that particular issue along with the developers. So as a tester, we should have that mindset to collaborate with the developers as well and then try to fix the issue. The last responsibility of the tester is to develop and maintain the test automation framework that has been created as part of your automation activity. Thank you so much everyone. I hope the session was quite useful to you, and I would like to thank the TestFlix for giving me this opportunity. And in case if you guys want to follow me, you can follow me on my Twitter, and you can always feel free to browse my website giridharrajkumar.com. Thank you so much again, and I'll see you in another forum.